Hey everyone, hi running coach and yoga athletes, Canaday here with another training talk. I believe this is episode number 64. Sorry for my hiatus. I do have a long vlog update coming out in a couple of days. We'll update you in the last month of my personal training as well as my 2023 race and event schedule. But wanted to get back to some training talks because, as you know, I work as a coach for higher running, and we're going to talk about zone training. I've done a lot of talks over the last decade and a half about heart rate training, zone training, rate of perceived effort. On our website, and this is a business plug, we have a free download resource for you. You can find it under the training plans, free plans section, the pace intensity spectrum chart. That's the higher running pace intensity spectrum chart. It's also under our resources tab on the page that Coach Sandy and I developed. And we have a new update to it, actually. So this is what it looks like. Ignore the scribbles on the bottom, but you get a free PDF download there. And it outlines what we look at in terms of the 5-zone theory. And I know there's some controversy, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of talk. You see the influencers, people getting into fitness now talking about, just doing zone 2 training, right? I've done talks on it. Aerobic base training, right? Low intensity, higher volume. And, I've always preached that. I just tweeted about that today, trying to increase your consistency in running. And doing that, you slowly are adding more days of running to your week. Instead of running 4 days a week, you're running 6 days a week. Instead of running 20 miles a week or 32K a week, you're running, over 50 miles a week or 80K per week. But it takes a while to build up to that, and you have to stay healthy, right? You can't sacrifice your sleep too much. You can't get a repetitive strain injury. So injury, time commitments, family, work, job obligations take a lot of that out for a lot of people. But the idea is, as we build fitness, it is more efficient to look at our training plans. And again, we sell training plans, 16-week training plans, Boston Marathon qualifying training plans, ultras, 5K, 10K plans, you name it. We have a new 5K plan actually on the website. Is that in all these distance running events, they're very aerobic based, but you do need to sprinkle in intensity at fairly specific intervals, and not just within the workout, but intervals within the week or the training month, right? So we don't just go out and run steady every day. We don't go out and just run easy every day. You could do that if you just want to have general fitness. It's good to move around, right? You could lift a lot of weights, do whatever you want. But if you want to try to reach your full potential in the sport, if you want to get that 5K PR, or you want to qualify for the Boston Marathon, or you want to finish that 100-mile ultramarathon more efficiently, the best strategy, and we've seen this throughout decades and coaches over time, is to do training where we distribute the intensity. On certain days and certain workouts, we go hard, and other days we go easy. And a lot of times we're taking most of our mileage, the vast majority, and this is why people preach zone 2 training, easy aerobic. I call it conversational pace a lot. Is that the bulk of our mileage, the bulk of our time, our weekly distance that we cover is at fairly low intensity and low heart rates, and mainly because we don't want to get injured. It's very common people get a muscle strain, or you get some overuse injury, stress fracture, hopefully not, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, stuff like that. So knee pain, back pain. So we try to minimize that with lower impact, but we still get the cardiovascular benefits. And because these events are aerobic based, 5K and up, you get really good at fat burning, very efficient, and it builds that muscular strength, the tendons, the muscles, even bone density it could, to be able to handle running faster. So you build strength not just with your heart and lungs and being able to breathe more efficiently, running faster for longer periods of time, but you get better at blood flow, and your muscles are stronger, and you stimulate slow twitch muscle fibers, utilize oxygen more efficiently, boost your running economy. So with the zone training, and we'll pull up the PDF chart. This is kind of the finalized version. What we see here working from the zone 1 is the low intensity. It's why it's green. And then we work into blue, which is more zone 2 training. Then zone 3 is more in this yellow. Then zone 4 is in the orange. Zone 5, we're getting into the red. Now, how these are distributed, notice that there's some overlap. This isn't all cut and dry, strict numbers. Zone 2 is 70 or 65% to 78% of your max heart rate. I kind of have it in that realm because for most people it is, but realize with heart rate training, and again, check out Coach Sandy's video on her channel, Running Wild. She recently uploaded a video on finding your max heart rate, some workout tests you could do versus finding your lactate threshold or tempo run heart rate, doing some different tests. Again, check that out, Sandy's video. She's the co-founder of higherrunning.com. So a great way to look into things like that, that would be zone 4 is the lactate threshold. So a lot of people call that anaerobic threshold, and we kind of labeled it in layman's terms as well. So not just tempo run, lactate threshold, anaerobic threshold, we realize that's kind of all the same thing. Whereas if you're a notch slower than that, if you're going a little bit easier, we actually at Higher Running call that up-tempo range. Some people would call it steady state. For a lot of people, if you're around a 3-hour marathon runner, that could be around your marathon pace. But if you're a 5-hour marathon runner, it would actually be faster than your marathon pace. And if you're super fast, it might be slower than your marathon pace. So what we did is we said that's equivalent to about 3-hour race pace. So, it would be all out. Whereas the lactate threshold intensity is more like, for most people, it's closer to 10K pace. But for an elite, it could be up to a half marathon if they're running a half marathon in close to 1 hour. So we realized the relative differences between that, not just in the percentage of your maximum heart rate, but in terms of what it means in the real world. Whether you're doing a all-out 5K race, which would be, or faster, which would be in the red zone, right? VO2 max. There's an anaerobic component there. We're developing lactic acid or lactate at an exponential rate. We're not able to clear it fast enough. So, there's an anaerobic component in zone 5. That's why you're in the red. You're over, for most people, over 90, 92, 95% max heart rate. More elites generally have to get up to higher percentages, whereas if you're less experienced or you're getting back into shape, maybe you could hit that closer to 90%, and then your zone 4, your lactate threshold might be closer to 80% of your max heart rate. So realize it is relative to your history, your chronological age, your running age, but also what relative paces you're running and what your training experience is. But as generally as you build mileage, you build experience, and you're getting faster, you could improve all those numbers. So there's a bit of a shift and there's a bit of an overlap, and that's why we show that these zones kind of do blend together. But the important distinction is, and we outline this in our training plans with subjective comments as well, if you're doing a progressive up-tempo run, the progression, say it's a 10K up-tempo to tempo run, the progression might be, that means you're speeding up throughout a 10K run, pretty long effort, right? Could be at the end of a long run even, if you're really hammering. But you might start closer to marathon pace, your 3-hour race pace, if you're looking for a BQ or something, and at the end, maybe you're squeezing it down the last 2K or the last mile, and you end up running closer to 10K pace, and you've crossed over your lactate threshold. So in one workout, you've blended the two zones here, yellow into orange, right, from up tempo to tempo. And so that's an example workout where you might be combining zones, whereas in other workouts we'll be very strict and we'll be like 20-minute tempo run right at lactate threshold. It's 10K pace plus 20 seconds a mile or 10 seconds a mile, something like that. You might be trying to lock in right between 85 to 88% of your max heart rate. And that's if you know your max heart rate, if you have an accurate monitor, usually chest strap, as well as what Sandy said in her video, again, Running Wild, subscribe to her channel, check that out, kind of knowing what your maximum heart rate is, because it's a moving target over time. And you could pull out higher numbers sometimes as you realize you could push yourself harder and harder over longer distances, and as you gain fitness, your resting heart rate might also drop. So the final note with this pace intensity spectrum chart and the whole idea behind our zone training is that there's also a rate of perceived exertion, RPE, which we outlined in the key up here. So not only do we have the percentages of max heart rate, but we also have, the race efforts, the rate of perceived exertion, or we could even call it the talk test for easy runs, right? Is that, what on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard are you going, right? And for most people, it doesn't scale exactly the same as the percentage of max heart rate, right? So for example, if you're in the green here, you got a true recovery day, zone 1 we call it, good fat burning zone, right? Maybe it's a warm-up jog, maybe it's the day after a long run, you just want to shake the legs out. Still some benefits there. Max heart rate might be around 60%, pretty low percent, but it's not a 6 out of 10 in the effort scale. It might kind of be if you're tired. It's more like 3 or 4 on the RPE. So 3 or 4 out of 10 on the effort scale. You're trying to stay as relaxed as possible and jog and move the legs. Your heart rate may be 60%. So as it goes up though, we get up to the lactate threshold tempo run zone. We're at 90% max heart rate. That's going to feel like an 8 out of 10 or maybe a 9 out of 10 on the rate of perceived exertion scale, right? So the way it scales up is a bit different with the numbers because you're at a 1 out of 10 pain scale, but how you compare that, it lines it up with relative heart rate as well as the relative paces. And in our training plans, our comprehensive training plans you could purchase at higherrunning.com, we outline very specific directions for each workout usually. We'll talk you through it in different ways. Not only is it relative maybe to your goal marathon pace or goal 5K pace, but relative to that RPE or perceived exertion. And again, back with the zone 2 training, is the bulk of most people's aerobic base, and even throughout the whole year, your training cycle, it's a lot of easy paced aerobic miles. I just say it's, do the talk test. It's a conversational pace. If you could talk, you're usually not going too hard. You're not, crossing the, aerobic threshold is what we would call it down there from going into up tempo, which is the yellow there. So again, check that out. It's a free resource on our website, higherrunning.com. That is a business plug. We do still training plans for any surface, any distance. And again, subscribe to Coach Sandy's channel. Check that out. Thank you so much for all your support on here, especially all the Patreon supporters. Got more updates coming your way. Like I said, I've been a little under the weather. I had a little bit of a illness recently, so ramping up training still. It's springtime here in Salida, Colorado. Looking forward to a racing season pretty soon. So hope you're doing well. Thanks to title sponsor Hoka for keeping the dream alive. And subscribe on here, like these videos if you like them. Comment below with future training topics that you would like to hear about. Check out my playlist. I've been doing this for a decade and a half on here on YouTube. And then follow me on social media at Sage Canaday on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. Thanks for your support, and stay tuned for more VO2 Max Productions.